Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Empath podcast series. Today, we'll be talking about a self care practice that I found so beneficial for my health, both physically and mentally. Ever since I joined this practice, my mind and mental space has greatly improved. And this practice is called yoga. So, the next guest that I have for you today is a 500-hour registered yoga teacher by Yoga Alliance. She first started yoga in 2011 and started teaching in 2016. She has undergone various trainings of hatha, yin, vinyasa, and ashtanga yoga in India. In 2019, she had the honor of studying under the guidance of BNS Iyengar, one of the last living disciples of Krishnamacharya, the father of modern yoga. In 2020, she further pursued a level 1 training of asanas for autism and special needs under Shawnee Thornton-Hardy from the US. She is currently in training to complete up to a level 3 certification. At heart, she is a seeker of knowledge and a yogini in training. This led to the creation of Yoga Sangha Philippines, an at-home virtual yoga studio for the goal-oriented practitioners that designs progressive class series and programs both for groups and individuals, dependent on their life stage and lifestyle. So this is actually my yoga teacher and really good friend. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome teacher Nicolette Ereñeta. So
Hi.
hi, teacher.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's great to see you again, other than in class.
I know it's a different setting for us.
Yes, definitely. All right. So for today, I would just like to get have our listeners get to know what is the practice of yoga and what it does to the mind or to the brain. So can you share to us what the practice of yoga is?
Sure. And this is a great topic that you suggested, Steph, and I'd be very much happy to elaborate on that. So, we first start off with what is the practice of yoga. So, yoga means different things to different people depending on who you talk to, how yoga first came to you, and who your teachers are. You'll hear others say that yoga is healing. They have chronic low back pain, and yoga helped ease that. Others include yoga in their self care routine to help them focus and calm the stresses of the mind, while others may have a more spiritual based approach to the practice that helps them get to know and appreciate themselves on a much deeper level. All of these are correct. It's like a diamond. There are so many facets to yoga based on where you are starting and the purpose behind it. But I would like to frame it from the perspective of yoga psychology. So, yoga, as a universal definition, is the connection between mind, body, heart, and spirit. So, the body that concerns our health and vitality, the mind governing our thoughts and our capacity of discernment, the heart, the state of our emotions when we have high life satisfaction and healthy relationships, our spirit or soul driven through action and a sense of purpose and meaning in life. When our body, mind, emotion, and soul are healthy and fulfilled, this is when a person is said to have achieved wellness or happiness or a state of well being. In yoga philosophy, when one or more are not aligned, it is when we experience misery or suffering. So when there is a disease, there is a dis-ease.
Yes, I love that quote.
So
Very
there,
witty.
it's a quotable quote that you can use as a mantra. So therefore, yoga is a practice of wholeness, and how this inherent practice of wholeness can create a state of mind and a way of viewing the world. And there are different tools of yoga that we as teachers use in order to guide or direct students to help along in their own journey. So there are three yoga tools I'd like to share today and how it affects our mind. First, yoga poses or asanas is the aspect of our practice related to your physical health. To an outsider, you are making all these shapes and contortions with your body. Um,
Yes, some of my friends think that.
but But on a deeper level, this targets both the musculoskeletal and the
Mm-hmm.
neuromuscular system. So there are a lot of high evidence-based medical journals where yoga asanas help manage chronic pain and disease like carpal tunnel, osteoarthritis, diabetes, pulmonary problems, gout, heart disease, thyroid, hypertension, and many, many more. And of course, helping with mobility, strength, and flexibility. But as a moving breathing system, asanas help with our sensory processing from our eight senses. So the five senses that we know, and then there's the vestibular or sense of balance, proprioceptive, where our body is in space, and interoceptive, our internal landscape. Not only are we working to stretch and strengthen the body, but we are giving our brain the mental exercise of developing focus and attention through sensory feedback. So, asana is a Sanskrit word, means seat. In the Yoga Sutras, stira
Mm-hmm.
sukham asanam. So,
Yes.
asana is where you place your body to assume a particular shape. But what about your mind? So, when you
Oh,
place your
yes.
body in a warrior one position, where are you placing your mind? So, asana to me not just involves a physical state, but a mental state. Is your mind also in that warrior one pose? Is your mind on your breath? Or are you thinking about lunch? Okay.
Whoops.
So, especially it's lunch. And asanas also present mental challenges. If we encounter challenges on the mat, the practice shows us how we react when discomfort comes. What is your mindset when you are learning new things? Do you run away when you are presented with a challenging pose? Or do you face them with openness? So, yoga develops mental strength and endurance. So, here, yoga develops mental strength and endurance. So, as the saying goes, your practice on the mat is a reflection of what you do off the mat. So, through asana, through our body, we begin to develop a level of awareness and understanding to self reflect and use the wisdom from our practice to gain a different perspective of ourselves and the world around us.
Oh, that's really nice, Nick. Thank you so much for sharing to us what yoga is. And I love the quote of when there is a disease, there is a dis-ease. So very tweetable. So given that you were able to talk about the what is yoga and also the yoga poses, I remember before in one of your classes, or most of the time in your classes, you talk about yogic breathing and also meditation. Would it be all right if you could share to our listeners what the yogic breathing is and what it does to the mind as well?
Sure. So, those are actually our second and third tools. So, the second tool involves
Mm-hmm.
our energetic body called pranayama. So, prana in
Mm-hmm.
Sanskrit means life force, and ayama means extension or expansion. So, it is using our energy intelligently to prolong or extend our lifespan. So, our breath is an aspect that relates not just to our physical health, but our mental health. And
Yes,
it's not just
definitely.
about the act of breathing, because
Mm-hmm.
you're breathing even without noticing, right? But rather the conscious use of our breath. So, pranayama targets our autonomic nervous system. Whenever we find ourselves unconsciously with chest or shallow breathing, or when we
Mm-hmm.
are in an environment that triggers stress, our sympathetic nervous system goes on high alert mode. Pranayama targets our autonomic nervous system. Whenever we find ourselves unconsciously with chest or shallow breathing, or when we are in an environment that triggers stress, our sympathetic nervous system goes up. When there's a stressor, a part of our brain tells us that there is a threat, and so our neurons would fire out signals where we can respond accordingly. We need this when we find ourselves in danger. Before, stress can come from fleeing from a tiger that wants to eat us. Nowadays, our threats have evolved to more psychological and are sustained over a long period of time. And you could have so many examples like pressure at work, mounting bills, and all that. But this doesn't mean that stress is bad. That's what I want to emphasize. There is nothing wrong with stress. It's part of life and we cannot escape from it.
Yes, I
But,
agree with you.
right? But like what we've been doing, we can always teach ourselves to be resilient.
That's
So
true.
yeah, so when our nervous system, because what happens is when our nervous system is always dysregulated, a lot of health problems can come up. Plus, we cannot learn and thrive when we are dysregulated all the time. So, high evidence based journals have shown pranayama to help a lot with stress management and enhancing work performance, reducing burnout and migraine, and have helped in neurological disorders like stroke, Parkinson's, MS, Alzheimer's, dementia, epilepsy, and so on. So, pranayama practices help regulate our fight flight stress response and improve our rest and digest response. When our nervous system is balanced, all our different systems benefit from it. So there are a lot of breathing techniques depending on what a student needs. And this practice is usually recommended to be learned under the guidance of a skilled teacher. So as you've learned also in our classes, there are pranayama methods that you practice when you are feeling sluggish or when you feel hyper. There are appropriate practices when you are in a tropical or winter climate, let's say. Or there are also techniques when you hold the breath or do alternate nose breathing to balance the right and the left brain hemispheres. All these are a means of regulating the mind and nervous system through the breath. So yoga is neuroscience because it works with our nervous system.
I really like when you talked about the autonomic nervous system, and it's something that I really relate to the most, especially when it comes to yoga. So it has really helped me in terms of my physical manifestation of the fight, flight type of, or even freeze type of
Uh,
reaction when it comes to stresses. So I really appreciated that you were able to share that with our listeners, and hopefully they can also see that yoga has a lot of scientific basis to it. So yes, and thank you so much for that and for enlightening us, Master Nick, on
oh my
these
gosh.
on the a lot of pressure now. Oh no, stress.
Oh,
So
response.
so yeah, so I hope people get to know that for yoga, it's also the fight, flight, freeze type of response that they can help regulate. And I really like how you talked about that stress isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's about building resilience and building that type of response appropriately that yoga can actually help people counter. So, yes, thank you so much for that.
And I'd like to share, like in the Yoga Sutras, if you read that book, there is this line that says the definition of yoga. So yoga is chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the complete mastery over the modifications of the mind.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
nice.
it's really nice. There's also another book called the Bhagavad Gita, wherein that book describes the tendency of the mind. So, but for him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. So, just like how we train and strengthen and stretch our muscles in our asana practice, we also have to train our brain through repeated practice to make new neuro connections. And we really need these types of practices like moving breathing system, asana poses, physical poses, regulating our nervous system, and that's what we can actually do most of the time, even if it's not physical. I would tell my kids in my kids class, your breath is a superpower. You can take with it anywhere. You don't have to remember it. You don't need to pack it. It's
Wow,
always there.
yeah.
Like if you're
Mm-hmm.
feeling anxious, if you're feeling nervous, stressed, you will always have a go-to tool, that you can do and um, you can do and practice. And of course, meditation, where you set time every day. And we've talked about this a lot of times about self-care, where self-care is not a privilege nor a selfless act, but it
Mm.
should be perceived as part of your lifestyle and your daily routine. Just like when you brush your teeth or you take a shower. So it's
Yes.
also like that. You really have to carve out time throughout the day, however that is for you, whether it's in the morning or before you go to bed. As long as you do this, then at least every day you're making small steps to self regulate.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well said, Nick. Thank you so much. I think that's all the time we have today. So thank you so much for coming, Teacher Nick. I really appreciated what you shared and what you've enlightened all our listeners with.
Sure.
So thank you so much. Is there any last minute things you'd like to say or shout outs you'd like to do?
Yeah, so for anyone looking at starting a yoga practice, whether you're first timer or a regular practitioner, and you're curious about what we do at Yoga Sangha, please go and check out our Facebook or Instagram, Yoga Sangha PH. So maybe there's a link somewhere where you can check. And then we are also offering a free trial class for empath listeners, the empath community. So
Yay!
can go on to our site, send us a message, just say that you've heard it from this podcast or from Empath social media pages. And just get a free trial class and choose any of the yoga track that suits you and your schedule. Alternately, we also offer other individualized programs, whether that's for a corporate workplace wellness program setting or for individuals.
Yes, thank you so much, Nick. So we also have a partnership with Yoga Sangha. So we're actually hosting a wellness retreat on March 6 to 7, 2021. If you are interested, and it's also outdoors, so it's by the resort.
Fun.
So ecotherapy, you can just message the Empath social media accounts or even Yoga Sangha accounts if you're very much interested to join. So thank you so much, Nick. Thank you, and we hope to see you again soon here.
Thank you, Steph. Have a great day, everyone.
Hey there, it's Steph Naval. If you're interested on leveling up your mental health and overall well-being, please follow our podcast to get free psychoeducational content. See you again in the next episode, and let's continue to advocate mental health care access for all.